South Cumberland is a big park to put into a nutshell. First, let's talk a little bit about the geography of South Cumberland State Park. The park isn't in one place. It's comprised of 9 separate tracts of land spread across 4 counties in southeast Tennessee: Grundy, Franklin, Marion, and Sequatchie. These 9 tracts all have names, some very curious, like Fiery Gizzard, Savage Gulf, and Lost Cove. South Cumberland State Park is still growing. Today, the park protects nearly 31,000 acres, most of which is pristine wilderness. Over 7,000 acres have been added to the park in just the past few years. To give you an idea of scale, if we placed Metro Nashville, Davidson County, shown here in purple, on top of South Cumberland State Park, it wouldn't even cover the extent of the park, from Savage Gulf in the north to Lost Cove in the south. As you might imagine, with all these different areas of land, South Cumberland State Park has multiple trailheads, leading to trails in every part of the park. In fact, there are 12 trailheads, shown here with blue dots. Let's take a look at each trailhead and some of the amazing natural features you'll find on the trails that begin at each of them. Savage Gulf North is most famous for the Great Stone Door, a large crack in the sandstone bluff that has provided a way for people to walk down into Savage Gulf for thousands of years. It's a gateway to a network of amazing hiking trails, both in the bottom and around the rim of Savage Gulf. Savage Gulf East is the best way to explore the Savage Creek Canyon, one of the 3 major canyons that form the Savage Gulf State Natural Area, a special designation given to this area of environmentally significant land within South Cumberland State Park. Savage Falls and the Werner Old Growth Forest are 2 highlights of this part of the park. There are also several backcountry campgrounds in this area. Savage Gulf South provides hikers with access to Collins Gulf, the canyon that forms the headwaters of the Collins River, which flows north into Center Hill Lake in Middle Tennessee. This canyon is notable for its spring wildflowers, and it's home to a dramatic boulder field, as well as Souter and Horsepound Falls, and the Schwoon Cave Spring, named for early settler Fred Schwoon. There's also a backcountry campground not far from the Savage Gulf South trailhead. Savage Gulf West is the gateway to the Big Creek Canyon, home to Greeter Falls, Board Tree Falls, and several amazing sinks, the opposite of springs. These are places where water simply disappears into the ground. Even Big Creek itself is no match for a sink in this canyon. On the rim of the canyon is a great backcountry campground. Now we leave Savage Gulf and head south to learn about other areas of South Cumberland State Park. Our next stop is Grundy Lakes in Tracy City, which was once a coal mining and coal processing area. There's a lot of history here, both from the time when coal was king and in the years following, when the Civilian Conservation Corps turned an abandoned eyesore into the beautiful series of 4 lakes you see today, complete with a swimming area and good fishing. Don't overlook the South Cumberland State Park Information and Welcome Center on Highway 41 in Monteagle. The Information and Welcome Center is normally open every day from 8 till 4. While it may not have overlooks or waterfalls, the Information Center does have plenty of helpful information, a kid-friendly exhibit area, maps, and a great gift shop. Outside, there's a teaching garden, wildflowers, and a new nature play area for the kids on the family-friendly Meadow Trail. Nearby is the upper end of an enormous canyon known as the Fiery Gizzard. Nobody knows exactly how it got its name, but there are at least 5 tall tales in circulation, any of which could be true. At the Fiery Gizzard North Trailhead is the Grundy Forest State Natural Area, another piece of exceptional, environmentally significant land that is protected within South Cumberland State Park. 500-year-old Canadian hemlock trees call this area home. They're remnants of the last ice age. There's also an interesting piece of history here. the site of the 1930s-era camp that housed Company 1475 of the Civilian Conservation Corps. Here, too, is a great backcountry campground. At the other end of Fiery Gizzard Cove, not only does the canyon get much bigger, but so do the waterfalls. The tallest falls in the park, Foster Falls, can be found at the Fiery Gizzard South Trailhead, along with outstanding sandstone bluffs, popular with rock climbers. Near Foster Falls, there's also a car camping area and several backcountry campgrounds as well. Just south of Foster Falls is another part of the park, Denny Cove, also popular with climbers because of its majestic and very tall bluffs. At the far end of the cove, you'll find Denny Falls, actually a double cascade, in a beautiful hemlock-lined setting. By area, most of the recent growth in South Cumberland State Park has been in its southern reaches in Franklin County, south of Suwanee. Here is one of the smaller pieces of the park, barely an acre in size, which contains a geological rarity, a naturally formed sandstone arch, or bridge, created as water from a nearby spring carved its way out of the hillside, which then broke away from the rest of the cliff line to create the unusual arch. This formation is at the north end of a huge area known as Lost Cove, from which this trailhead, Lost Cove North, takes its name. There is a second such natural bridge, 1/4 mile down the Lost Cove East trailhead, which has a commanding view of the upper Crow Creek Valley watershed. Crow Creek is born where it flows out of a huge cave, which we'll talk about in a moment. But the water in Crow Creek has its origins in Lost Cove itself, just to the north of this area. Unlike most canyons in this region, Lost Cove has no obvious exit, hence its name. Instead, all water that falls within the 5,000-acre cove drains into a huge sinkhole just outside the park. It runs underground and emerges from a cave. Also, it's important to note that hunting is allowed in certain portions of the Lost Cove area of the park during deer season, although areas immediately adjacent to the trails are posted as no hunting zones. The Lost Cove West trailhead will take you to Lost Cove Cave, better known as Buggy Top Cave, named by early settlers who thought they saw the outline of a buggy, as in horse and buggy, in the massive cliff face above the cave's entrance. Lost Cove Cave is the largest cave opening in the state of Tennessee, but visitors should know that the cave is closed from September through May in order to protect the endangered bat populations that need to hibernate safely in the cave each winter. Caving, that is, going beyond the daylight areas at the front of the cave, requires an advance permit, which can be obtained online at the Tennessee State Parks website. As you've seen, there's a wide variety of interesting things to see and do at each of the 12 trailheads in South Cumberland State Park. While most visitors come to see well-known features, such as the Stone Door or Fiery Gizzard, there's much more to the park, and many great adventures to be had from every one of the 12 trailheads. The South Cumberland region wouldn't be the beautiful, lush, and breathtaking area that it is without water. Water carves its canyons, and the area receives an annual rainfall of over 59 inches per year, almost double the national average. Because the South Cumberland Plateau is capped by a thick layer of sandstone, its cliff lines are durable and have remained intact, even as the softer limestone beneath has eroded away, creating the rugged escarpments and making possible the waterfalls that attract over 650,000 people to the South Cumberland State Park each year. Here are just a few of the waterfalls in the park, and the trailheads that will lead you to them. In addition to all these breathtaking waterfalls, don't forget that South Cumberland State Park also has great swimming holes, springs, and its mysterious sinks, all waiting to be explored and enjoyed. But be warned, there's no jumping off the waterfalls. The pools of water below these falls are not very deep, but they are filled with large rocks just out of view below the surface. And at any time of the year, rocks above and below the falls can be extremely slippery, whether from ice or simply from the black algae that coats many of these rocks in or near the water. South Cumberland State Park isn't just about natural history, it also protects and tells the story of human history. Over the past 10,000 years, a remarkable variety of people have made this area home, and the stories of their struggles and successes are an important part of the park, too. The first humans arrived in this region about 10,000 years ago. These hunter-gatherers climbed the plateau each summer in search of wild game. Early on, these were hunting forays in search of elk, white-tailed deer, black bear, and other game, where hunters sought protection in the caves and rockhouses, the sheltered spots beneath the sandstone overhangs. Later, after the development of agriculture, they became year-round residents of this area. Many settlers called the rich bottomland of the central Savage Gulf home. Hobbs Cabin is one of those places. It was home to Joe Hobbs and his family. Now, overnight hikers can stay in the Hobbs Cabin by reservation, but it's still primitive camping. The house has no heat, water, or bathroom facilities. The Decatur Savage Cabin is in the very bottom of Savage Gulf, near where Savage Creek, the Collins River, and Big Creek all converge to form a larger Collins. Savage Gulf is named after the Savage family, although the rocky terrain and steep canyon escarpments certainly earned the Savage description as well. The Savage family can trace its presence in the Gulf as far back as 1719, when Robert Savage obtained 250 acres in the area. Robert's son, Decatur Savage, and his wife farmed and lived in the bottom of Savage Gulf for many years. The home that still remains was built around 1820. The production of bootleg liquor, or moonshine, was both illegal and a viable source of income for impoverished individuals in the remote canyons of the Cumberland Plateau. There are numerous sites within the park where remains of moonshine stills can be seen. One is on the Fiery Gizzard Trail in Marion County. The other is in Grundy County on the Schoolhouse Branch, just off the Grundy Forest Day Loop Trail. The Chattanooga-McMinnville Turnpike Company constructed a stagecoach road in the Collins River Canyon in the 1830s to help move wagons and livestock up and out of the gorge. 2 miles of the roadway still exist, supported by dry-stacked stone retaining walls. The Stagecoach Road, built largely by enslaved laborers, is included in the National Register of Historic Places. This mill on Fire Scald Creek just above Greeter Falls began as a grain mill and ended as a sawmill. Over its lifetime, it was owned by several pioneer families, including the Longs, the Hunters, and finally by the Greeters, who converted it to serve the family's lumber milling operation. Foundations still remain of what was once a busy venue for local commerce until a massive flood wiped the site clean. Remnants of the house foundations of many European settlers can be found in or adjacent to Savage Gulf. The Greeter family homestead, adjacent to Fire Scald Creek at the head of the Big Creek Gorge, can still be seen by park visitors. A special-purpose railroad line, the Dinky Line, on the north rim of Savage Creek, was a narrow-gauge railway. It brought timber out of Savage Gulf, over to Palmer, and on down to Tracy City. Hikers can follow 2 miles of the old rail bed, built around 1925, on their journey to the backcountry, and aptly named Dinky Line Campground. The discovery of coal in Tracy City in 1845 dramatically and permanently altered the economic trajectory of the region. Most of the coal in this area was found in narrow strata, or seams, the extraction of which required coal miners to crawl or squat while working. The mine shafts which penetrated these narrow seams were known as dog-hole mines because their entrances were, as miners like to say, barely big enough for a dog to get through. Along the Fiery Gizzard Trail is one particularly good example of a dog hole mine. At the Grundy Lakes area of the park, you can see the remains of the beehive-shaped coke ovens, where coal was heated to produce coal coke, which was later used in blast furnaces to make iron. You can also see depressions in the hillsides, the remains of many small dog hole mines. In the 1930s, during the Great Depression, the people who lived on the plateau were hit hard economically. Recognizing the need, a group of Tracy City businessmen, led by Herman Bagenstoss, got together, raised money, and bought over 200 acres, which they then gave to the state for use as a civilian conservation corps camp. Today, we know that area as the Grundy Forest State Natural Area. CCC Company 1475, composed of 200 young men who were on relief, built roads, strung telephone lines, constructed fire towers, and fought fires. It was these young men who built the dams at Grundy Lakes and the first sections of the Fiery Gizzard Trail. Observant visitors can find evidence of these early human activities in the park. As with all historic and archaeological sites, a strict take-nothing-but-pictures rule should be observed in order to leave these bits of history for others to appreciate and enjoy. There are 13 backcountry campgrounds in South Cumberland State Park, in both the Savage Gulf and Fiery Gizzard areas of the park. You can find information on the park's online campsite reservation system about the location and layout of each campsite, as well as pricing and availability of specific sites. Camping regulations and policies are also listed on the site. Each campground is identified, and when you click on a particular campground, it displays the individual and group campsites that are available. You can search the campsites for availability on dates of your choice, or you can browse all of the sites for availability by date. In the reservation system, you can also see photos of each individual campsite, whether for car camping, which is currently available only at the Foster Falls campsite, or for backcountry camping elsewhere in the park. What follows is a rundown of which campsites are most easily accessed from each of the trailheads in the Savage Gulf and Fiery Gizzard areas of the park. In Savage Gulf, there are 3 additional campsites that are roughly equal distances from multiple trailheads. Those campsites are Sawmill, Stagecoach Road, and Hobbs Cabin. Pricing for campsites is now demand-driven, so the most popular sites may have a higher nightly fee than other comparable but less well-known campsite locations. Check out the online campsite reservation system and start making your plans now for an amazing overnight adventure in South Cumberland State Park. Clearly, the topography of the park is one of its signature features. In addition to making possible the many waterfalls of the South Cumberland region, it creates magnificent overlooks, many of which provide rare, unobstructed views of pristine wilderness with no sign of human interaction. On almost every rim trail in the park, you'll find opportunities to take in such views and to listen, undisturbed, to the sounds of nature at work in every season. Among some of the more popular overlooks are the following. abundance of amazing overlooks, waterfalls, and deep, cool, hemlock-lined canyons is due in no small measure to the vast size of South Cumberland State Park. For perspective, consider that 2 of the 9 tracts that comprise South Cumberland State Park are each larger than 88% of the other parks in the Tennessee State Park system. The Friends of South Cumberland is a nonprofit group of volunteer citizens founded in 1994, whose mission is to support the park's management, rangers, and staff as they work to protect, interpret, and maintain the park for all to enjoy. A park this large inevitably has needs that cannot be met exclusively with state funding. New trails must be built, and existing trails must be maintained or upgraded. New and expanded facilities and interpretive, wayfinding, and directional signage are needed. Invasive pests, like the hemlock woolly adelgid, and invasive plants must be controlled. Guided hikes, historical reenactments, and programs for area school children must be prepared and delivered. And the work of conserving additional environmentally significant lands is far from complete. To meet these challenges, the Friends of South Cumberland is organized into 10 committees, led by its board of directors. Each committee has responsibility for providing assistance to the park in a different way. Volunteers are always welcome in each of these areas, and no prior experience is required. To learn more about the organization's work and how you can help, visit the What We Do page of the Friends website at friendsofsouthcumberland.org.